Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. So we finally got our Koni Sports in. We had the rear shocks in, it took a while to get the fronts. We finally got the front, so we're gonna share some information with you guys. Now these shocks are also known as Koni Yellows for obvious reasons. Been very successful. We have utilized these on so many vehicles in the past, RX-7s, Miatas, I mean, you name it, like every chassis. So when we heard that these were coming out for the Tesla Model 3 and Y, we were very excited. So this is their adjustable shock. It is damping adjustable. Now, to my knowledge, if it was anything like in the past, Koni is more focused, as most adjustable shocks, on the rebound settings, but I believe that their compression valving might be relatively fixed. On other brands, you will definitely see adjustment on the rebound side for sure, but there will definitely be some minute adjustments on the compression curve. I don't know if Koni does that. I think they might, for the most part, fix the compression curves. They may have some shock dynos, some general shock dynos on their website that you can reference to see if that is in fact true or not. So without further ado, I'm going to point out a couple of things. So we set this shock up at the firmest setting. We set this one up at the softest setting. I will later on in the video show you guys, we'll compress them like we always do, and you can see the difference in the rates of rebound. On the front damper, they have a traditional knob, which is great. Now they do things kind of opposite, where you can see here that counterclockwise is a positive, so that's stiffer, and clockwise is softer to the negative sign. So on a lot of the Japanese shocks or other shocks out there, it's the opposite. Clockwise is stiffer, righty-tighty, and then counterclockwise is softer. So this knob literally just goes onto the top of the damper, and you'll just rotate it. So there are no clicks on the Konis, so you just have to count your revolutions, and that's how you're going to determine where your dampers are set. And just make sure you get your left and your right in the same position, the same revolution. The other thing to note is that when you do install these, the pin top, which is the threaded portion of the top of your shock, is larger in diameter than the factory upper mount. So you're going to have to drill out this center hole so that it will slide through. Koni does include that in their instructions. They do mention it. You will need to supply your own drill bit to make that happen. But as you can see, it will not go through. All right, so just make sure you drill this out. Be aware of that. This is, like a normal, you only get one knob. Well, actually you'll get a left and a right knob, but you don't leave these on the damper. I would not suggest that. It may fall off. So you just keep this in the car, put it on the damper when you need to adjust it, take it back off. Now, onto the rear shocks. So the Tesla is a divorced shock and spring setup, meaning the spring is separate from the shock. It's not like a traditional coil over where the spring sits on top of the actual damper. So when that happens, typically the factory upper mount virtually butts up against the chassis. So you won't have much room to actually get a knob on here to adjust it. And the space may not be open to the cabin area. So you can't even access it from inside the vehicle, and Tesla is like that. So what Koni does on these divorce setups is you don't get a knob. You literally have to take this shock, and I won't be able to compress it on the table, so I'll do that on the ground and show you in a moment. You've got to compress this shock and then rotate it. And this is basically your adjustment knob. You're literally going to compress this down here. Once this is down here, you can spin and rotate this to get your setting. And then you've let it fully extend and it locks in that setting. So we did turn it all the way in one direction. It did stop, and we turned it all the way in the other direction, and it did stop. So you will know if you've compressed it all the way in, and you'll find these stopping points for the firm and the soft side. So like I said, I put blue tape here. This one is the firm one, the stiffest setting. This one is at the softest setting. We opted to install the factory upper mounts on it so that we could demonstrate this. It's a little bit easier to compress this and turn it with the upper mount. So this is how I would recommend doing it. But you'll have to do that before you install the bump stop. So this upper mount will have to come off. Now in Koni's instructions, they actually share an illustration where they put this basically in a vise, and you push the shock down, compress it, and then rotate this shock body. So I'm a little bit scared of doing that. I don't trust that individuals will be able to do that without marring this or damaging something. So my suggestion would be pull out your rear shock, take the factory upper mount off of it, put the upper mount on here without the dust boot, without the bump stop, compress this all the way, because if the bump stop is here, you will not be able to compress it all the way. It won't change the values. Compress this all the way, rotate the upper mount, get to your setting. It might take you a couple of tries to get to your happy place, but that's just what's involved. You know, with the other brand that we sell so much of, that's for comfort, these shocks we really wanted to bring in for those guys that want to autocross or road race with their factory springs, don't want to spend money on a full coilover setup, but do need something, or they have class restrictions and limitations for what they can do. So if you're autocrossing in a stock class, as of right now, this is your only damper that will give you that sporty driving and the valving that you might need. So what I suggest you do is that, like I said, just compress this, rotate it, let it extend. It'll be fixed into its setting. Now, if you want to adjust this in the car, that's not going to happen. I was thinking that it would happen, and then Tim reminded me that, hey, there's a bump stop here. When you compress this shock in the car, even if you were to unbolt this and leave the bottom bolted in and you're at the track, you won't be able to compress the shock all the way because the bump stop will be in the way to change the damping. So this shock has to come out. I think that's the only downside to that, something that you guys should be aware of when you do purchase these. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys exactly what these shocks do at the firmest and the softest end, and we'll show you guys. We'll bolt them in the car. We're going to align it. I'm going to put them in a 2021 Model 3 Performance with factory springs, and I will share with you the customer reviews. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the dampers set up in a way that he likes it within a reasonable amount of time. I do think that this one's going to take a little bit more setup involved. But as we gain data and we get them on more cars, we should be able to find what those baseline values would be for different types of individuals. So again, guys, we appreciate you for supporting us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you haven't seen our Patreon account, please check that out, patreon.com/ZevCentric. We will put links in the description below for this product as well as our other accounts. And on to us showing you exactly what these shocks will do. The rear shocks in particular, I'm not really going to do the front because I can't install the upper mount. And then we'll show you guys these shocks getting thrown into the car and give you some reviews. All right, guys, here we go. We've got the stiff one on this side and we got the softest setting on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and compress them. I'm going to let them rebound and show you guys the difference. Now, I did mention where the compression curves should be relatively constant throughout the settings. This will adjust rebound. And I can somewhat feel that the compression, it is a little bit softer on this side. It's pretty minor though. Okay, there we go. Now we're down. This one did go all the way. It did bottom out before the stiffer one. So let's go. So there you go. There's the difference. So again, this was the firmest setting. This is the softest. Now, just to kind of reiterate how you would adjust this shock. So if you didn't want to put this in a vise, like they indicate in their instructions or they illustrate in their instructions, this is what I suggest. Put the factory upper mount on here. Do not install the bump stop or the dust boot so you can fully compress this. Once you set it, then you'll need to remove this upper mount, put the bump stop and the dust boot on there, and then reinstall it on there before you put it in the car. So what we do is we'll go ahead and compress this shock like this. I'm holding the bottom with my feet so that the shock body doesn't spin, right? And then you could spin it. So if I go this way counterclockwise, it stops. It'll spin the whole shock body. But if I go this way, it will adjust. And in the instructions, they show there's 720 degrees of rotation before it stops. And let's see here. Did I get it? There we go. I think we're there. You can kind of feel it. And then you'll basically let this go. Now they do indicate that you need to kind of pull this up. So you'll pull this up as best you can. And once it's fully extended, it should be in its position where you'd want the valving set. If you want to adjust it, you'll have to compress it again, like so. Oh yeah, it's definitely adjusted, like so. Go in the opposite direction. So let's just spin this several times until we get to that stopping point. So I guess we could just do this also, if you want to. There we go, it stopped. So that might be faster and easier. Push this down, rotate the shock body, and now it's at the softest setting. Once it's all the way up, you can reorient this upper mount so that the bottom holes and the top holes line up with the chassis. So once it's all the way up, you can turn this and it won't change the damping at all. All right? So there you go, guys. Let's get it in the car and we'll share some reviews from the customer with you. All right, everyone, so it's all done. We've got the Koni Sports on this car. We initially started out with the factory springs. So this Model 3 Performance, we originally had the factory springs on it paired with the Koni Sports, and we just could not get it to ride well. The client was not happy. So he ended up coming back to us and getting our ZEV iBox springs to produce a level drop on the car. And in doing so, it allowed him to get a progressive spring rate in the rear, and it's a linear spring rate in the front. That really helped to smoothen out the ride. His wife doesn't complain anymore. We probably removed these shocks about 4 different times, the rear shocks, to set the damping. So that was not fun. I do highly recommend that you guys buy this package if you are going to from us, so we can give you some guidance on where to set the dampers, that we don't have to keep pulling them in and out. If you are a DIY guy, that's helpful. If you're not, and you got to pay a shop to continue to do it, that's going to get pretty expensive. So we can get you pretty darn close to where you might want it to be. Again, everybody's a little bit different. So, you know, we'll do our best. We at least have some data. So check it out. This car, typically Performance Model 3 start at about 390 millimeters from the hub to the fender. We are at 370 front and back. So it's about a 20 millimeter drop before these things settle. You will notice that the iBox Performance Model 3 spring actually lowers the rear more than the front. That is why we went ahead and did our own setup to produce a more level drop. Now, with getting iBox springs, for us, it's compulsory that you get rear camber arms. That's the only way to get this ride height to be level. Otherwise, you have a ton of camber and the rear will sag down lower. When you fix that camber angle, the ride height fixes itself and it becomes level. So he's got Mountain Pass Performance rear camber arms in the back here. We've set this up to be about negative 0.8 degrees of camber in the back, and he's about 1.1 in the front. That's just factory static camber with us, fixing and adjusting his carriages. So we will put links in the description below. I did test drive this thing, again, like I said before, with OEM springs. Both myself and the client did not like the way it felt, so I would highly recommend that if you are going to get the Koni Sports, that you get these and you pair them with the iBox springs, our iBox springs more importantly. That rode quite well, actually. We're definitely at the softer end. I did not check to see how stiff it would be at the stiffest end, but I will say that if you are going to track your car or autocross your car, this is definitely the damper to get. There's no doubt about it. At the softer end, they feel quite good. I will say if you go over expansion gaps on a bridge, for example, that you will get into like kind of a bouncy oscillation. I think that's the only downside. If you adjust your speed and vary your speed, you'll get yourself out of that kind of oscillation. But other than that, they felt really great on the street, on the highway, hitting big dips on the highway, like in increasing radius turn or anything like that. It resolved really well. So these get a thumbs up from me. I would prefer to get these over the Koni Reds for sure, the FSDs, the self-damping ones. Those didn't work out so well for us, but the Koni Sports I can definitely sign off on. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We will share links to this in the description below. We will also share the link to our original install video for coilovers up here, where you'll get more detailed instructions on the tools you need, the torque specs, and all that good stuff. We hope that this proved to be informative to you guys, because these Koni Sports were not as easy as we all thought. But as you could see, the front you can adjust with the knob. In the front, you just got to pull the tub out. Or you can lift the corners of the tub, get in there, put the knob in there, and adjust it. The rears, unfortunately, you've got to pull them out. So we appreciate you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next one.